LeBron James had some very critical comments and about Karl Malone and John Stockton in the Utah Jazz. Because in the NBA All-Star Draft, he selected Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert were left last, and he tried to explain this away by saying, oh, we never played with them on video games.
Mm-hmm.
Do you buy what he is selling?
Here we go. Here's what he said.
I just want to say something because there's no slander. There's no slander to the Utah Jazz, but you guys got to understand. You guys got to understand, just like in video games growing up, we never played with Utah. Even as great as Karl Malone and John Stockton was, we would have never picked those guys in video games.
No, that's why I took Tristan Thompson.
Dude, I never brought up Tristan Thompson,
Tristan,
bro.
I'm kidding. Relax.
Come on now.
I think this is a ridiculous comment by LeBron to make. I think it's embarrassing. I think when you bring up the names of John Stockton and Karl Malone, and we're going to have an argument here about millennials and the fact that I don't believe that 9 out of 10 millennials understand that John Stockton is arguably the best point guard in the history of the NBA. Mm-hmm. When I say John Stockton hit one of the greatest three-point shots ever, is there any footage that comes to mind? Do you know who I'm even talking about?
No, I don't know the shot. When I think of John Stockton, I think of his prolific quickness and his ability to finish at the rim. That's what I think about as a point guard. And obviously he was a phenomenal distributor, but I don't think of him as a shooter. I think of him as a passer, somebody who's very quick off the dribble, and somebody who basically powered that offense.
Well, I got news for you, Slick.
See, and that's the attitude your generation has, and that's why this argument that you're about to make is just so dumb. Like, it's dumb. But go ahead and make
John
it.
Stockton and Karl Malone can play in any era. And when I say to you, hey, Stockton and Malone, or Stockton to Malone, you don't even know what that signifies. And I think that's part of the problem with our younger generation. Anything that happened before 1990, let's say, the youth of our country has no desire to know or acknowledge it. And it is incredibly frustrating. Stockton and Malone, essentially took the Lake Show to the next level. When you think about the fast break in this league, there were few who ran the fast break today, tomorrow, yesterday, or the day before better than Karl Malone did. Karl Malone is a mailman because he delivers, right? And there are few power forwards who had the scoring touch, the finishing ability at the rim that a guy like Karl Malone possessed. And you look at John Stockton's ability to distribute the ball, his basketball, just the understanding of the game that both Stockton and Malone had. Their basketball IQs are off the charts. And so the idea that they couldn't adapt to today's game is ridiculous. And the idea that, LeBron James didn't pick Gobert and Don because, we never played with Stockton and Malone on Sega is incredibly disrespectful in my opinion. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think he's completely full of garbage. And I think am I wrong about your generation? About the millennial generation?
I just think that as much as you don't like that we don't respect your past, no millennial.
It's not my past.
Well, whatever you want to call it. Anything
History
that happened before 1990.
History.
Whatever, dude. That's your time. You were born in the 70s. That is your time. The 70s forward is your generation's time. Like, that's your history. That's.
But it matters.
You want to say it.
But it matters.
Right, I'm not saying it doesn't matter. You're sitting here saying it's not your history, but then saying that I don't know the history of the NBA. Like, yeah, I don't have the same level of knowledge and experience and respect for that era. I disagree that Stockton and Malone would be the same Stockton and Malone that they were in their era than they would be in this era.
Because they'd be different athletes. This is the thing that not everybody, acknowledges. If Stockton and Malone were playing today, they would be completely different players. They would be far superior to who they were then because training is different. Athletes go about their business very differently now. Nutrition, like Karl Malone never had the ability to spend the money that LeBron spends on his body because that theology wasn't in place, right? But if you look at Karl Malone, the guy was ripped. He was shredded. He was always in great shape. Always. You look at John Stockton, the same thing. They just went about it a very different way. If they were playing today, they would be far more advanced than they were then.
But is that the discussion we're really having? Because
You cannot compare Stockton and Malone in their era of basketball to today's player. Today's player is an outside linebacker playing guard. It's just a different style of game.
Yeah, I think that's a very convenient argument to make to make them or to give them a better chance. I don't think it's fair to say, well, if they were playing in today's era and they had everything that every other player today has, they'd be just as good. That's not the discussion we have when we talk about Michael versus LeBron. That's not the discussion we have when we have make
because
any
you're
of these
talking
comparisons.
about historically, the best players ever. LeBron, Jordan, Magic, Bird, Kobe are all in a different stratosphere.
So when we talk
all of
about
those guys could have
guys-
played in any generation.
Okay. So when we talk about those guys, we don't apply that same logic. We're just saying, hey, because of how good they were, they could do whatever they essentially could play in any era, and it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and I believe that Stockton and Malone belong in that same conversation. I think that John Stockton could play point guard in any league at any time in any generation.
So who does he compare to today?
I would put him up there with anybody. I would put him up there with Steph Curry. I would put him up there with the greatest point guards ever, the Kuzis of the world. John Stockton defined a generation of point guard, and because he's white and because he played in Utah, nobody wants to respect that. And I think it is really unfortunate. Who are the best point guards in the NBA today, in your opinion?
Well, yeah, I mean it's all the usual names. It's Curry and Kyrie and Dame, obviously. I mean it's all the guys we saw last night. Donovan's probably there. I don't think he's probably on Curry and Kyrie's level.
If you look at the way the game has changed, the only difference is the volume of three-point shot that's being taken today. The assist numbers, the passing numbers, the intelligence, the intellect, the court vision. Stock has all of that. There is just no doubt about that. That John Stockton can play with any point guard in the league. There is no question in my mind. And it is incredibly, it's not frustrating, it's just disappointing that NBA fans today think because, they don't, I never saw John Stockton dunk. Okay, well, everybody can dunk. That's the best way to put this into perspective. Mm-hmm. Everybody gets all boned over the fact that, Zion Williamson, look at those alley-oops. And cool, man. Everybody can dunk. Not everybody can shoot. You want to know LeBron's biggest flaw of playing in the 80s? He cannot shoot at a high level.
Okay.
He has to. LeBron James made his name as an athlete in the NBA. And what made him more advanced than everybody else is he was physically intimidating. Very much like Zion Williamson, except LeBron was much more skilled than Zion is. Mm-hmm. But if you look at LeBron James, he just outran everybody. He outdunked everybody. He had bigger shoulders than everybody. He just was a physical freak. But he couldn't shoot when he was early in his career. You look at, could young LeBron James have broken in on the level that Magic Johnson did? Well, no, because you had to go to college first. Mm-hmm. So how would that's why it's hard to compare eras. How would LeBron's game have changed if he'd actually went and gone to Duke and played for Coach K?
Yeah, I don't know, man. His shot probably would be better.
I think he'd be a far more advanced player. I just think that there has to be some level of understanding of how the games have changed. And to write off Stockton and Malone the way that LeBron did tells you how shallow and how much, I'm not going to say he's a fraud because I think LeBron has respect for history. He just doesn't know history. I would be stunned if he's ever watched live Stockton and Malone play. I highly doubt it. I highly even just based on his age, I highly doubt it.
Yeah, man, I think that I think that you got to watch Michael versus the Jazz live, and I think that whole dynamic and how that went down, I think gives you a greater sense of appreciation for who Stockton and Malone are. I disagree. I don't think that Stockton and Malone's game would just translate fine in today's era. I think it's completely different. I think the thing that you say that the only difference in the game is the volume of 3-point shooting, but what that means then also, if that's the case, if that's true, what that also means is that they would have to deal with a lot more pick and roll. They would have to deal with a lot more athletic and physical defender. I haven't watched Stockton live, but I was watching highlights this morning. I watched a lot on him, and I think that one of the biggest things that he lived on was a transition game and his inside-out dribble in transition to get him an open look at the basket. And I'm telling you right now, all those looks at the basket, he wouldn't have necessarily got in today's game, because I don't think today's game is as free-flowing at times as theirs was, but either way, whatever, man. Like you have more of an appreciation than I do. I think if LeBron played in their era, I think he would. I think he would be as prolific as he is today. I don't think there's. I just don't know how you argue that. I don't know how you dispute the fact that if a LeBron James led team was playing Stockton and Malone in their prime, how LeBron in that offense would not create the matchup of LeBron versus even Stockton or Malone on the perimeter one-on-one. I don't know how that just would happen. That would happen all the time, because it happens today in his games.
But again, what I'll say is that's fine, because Karl Malone physically, Karl Malone and LeBron James are the same body. I don't know if you realize that. Like it is.
I don't think Karl Malone is nearly as quick as LeBron James.
Oh my goodness.
I don't think he would. I don't think that Karl Malone would be able to move with LeBron James.
You're crazy.
I think if LeBron wanted to play with him on the block, it's pretty even. But I think if you've got him at the elbow, you're in great shape.
You're crazy, dude. Like Karl Malone was a physical freak. The guy just his ability to knock down the mid range. He routinely lived on that, and it allowed him to get to the basket. He very much had the luxury of playing with some really good big men, but their ability to get out and run, their guard play was not always elite physically. The Hornaceks and the Howard Isleys of the world. But if you just look at the 1997 Utah Jazz, right? If you look at the 1997 Utah Jazz roster, right, and you begin to understand how that game was, or how that roster was built, and the type of players they had to rely on, it's the Shandon Andersons of the world. It's guys like Greg Foster, right, who was a role player. You look at the Chris Morrises, the Greg Ostertags, the great center of the Utah Jazz. Generationally speaking, Greg Ostertag is not an elite center at all in any way, shape, or form. But he played his role because Stockton and Malone made everybody better. You were more effective because you played with Jordan. You played with Magic. You played with Bird. You played with Stockton and Malone. So you were better. Your game was raised. People don't understand that. Nobody knows who the fuck Greg Ostertag is.
People say that about LeBron all the time when they talk about him versus Kobe and even Michael.
He doesn't,
LeBron makes everybody better.
But LeBron doesn't make everybody better. LeBron doesn't. Because what LeBron, especially now, LeBron doesn't command a double team on the perimeter. If LeBron's shooting threes, you're doing just fine. He'll go off sometimes and make a bunch, but 9 out of 10 times, you're fine if he's shooting a three. You get in trouble when LeBron gets into the paint. That's where LeBron's deadly, right? You look at John Stockton. John Stockton could knock down the three and he could drive and kick, right? You look at the way that they made their money. Their money was made in elite half-court execution. And then if you let them get out on the break, you were screwed. I'm telling you, Karl Malone can hang with LeBron James. There is no doubt about that. None whatsoever. And I look at the rest of their roster. The Brian Russells, the role player was elite, right? And again, they weren't the best because they ran into Jordan. But but what I will say is, Stockton and Malone can play in any generation against any player. It's not even close. The level of understanding in this conversation is shocking to me in terms of LeBron James. That LeBron doesn't understand that and LeBron has no respect for that is shocking. It's disappointing. It's frustrating. It is everything that Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert talked about the other day with the officials. There's no respect there. Like the NBA doesn't want us to win. This all plays right into that. LeBron just threw a bunch of gasoline on that fire with those comments.
And so is he a criminal for that? Like, is that like, because I think that it's true that nobody wants to. It's not surprise. We talk about it all the time that the Jazz are not the sexiest team in the league. They don't have a superstar or per se. But I guess at the end of the day, the Jazz need to win a championship. It's that simple. You want to put all this to bed. You want to stop guys from like LeBron from talking. You have to go out and beat them. You have to go out and win a championship, and you have to prove to everybody that you are, a legit first seed in the Western Conference. Because I don't think that just doing it in the first half is gonna make everybody believe. Like clearly, LeBron doesn't believe that. Clearly, all the guys, because we shouldn't just be criticizing LeBron, by the way. Like, we should be criticizing Kevin Durant. We should be criticizing the entire staff right there. Because notice what happened when LeBron James said that. They all started laughing because they thought it was funny, right? So it shouldn't just be that we criticize LeBron. I think that, to your point, the whole thing of it playing into what, Rudy and Donovan said is true. Like, again, those guys were all laughing and in agreement with LeBron on that. So I don't know, man. I think that, yes, you have a case that my generation doesn't have as much perspective or appreciation or love for what Karl and Stockton were. But at the same time, you're never going to get my generation to agree that LeBron James would not dominate in that era just as he's dominated in this era.
And I think a lot of that is just straight up a lack of understanding.
Wow.
Let's get some comments. Gabe Ledley, Lopes fan Gabe, congratulations on the GCU WAC Conference Championship.
Yeah, how about that? Been waiting for that for a few years.
Good morning to you. Eric and Rowley says the only time LeBron would have been able to watch them was in the finals against the Bulls. Yeah, truth. I agree. By the way,
he hasn't watched them though. Like, you can't tell me that LeBron James, one of the greatest players this game has ever seen, doesn't have or hasn't watched John Stockton and Karl Malone.
I don't believe he has.
You can't tell me he hasn't watched.
When you think Utah Jazz, who do you think of? You think of Stockton and Malone. He has a general cursory knowledge of the NBA and its history. He could not tell you.
What do you want him to say? What is he supposed to say that would say that he understands them? Is he supposed to say that they can hang with him? No,
he's supposed to say that. But you don't come out and say nobody played with those guys on video games and watch that. Shut up. Like, why would you say that? Why would you say that?
What's
the upside? What were you trying to prove?
It's not that he was trying to prove anything. It's that he believes he's the best player the game's ever seen, and that those guys aren't better than him on the floor.
Yeah, I don't.
By the way, I don't know that
that's not what we were talking.
Wrong,
that's not what he was talking about.
I don't know that he was necessarily wrong. I can't say that when I turn on 2K, I'm looking to play with that Jazz team. That's not what I'm looking to do, and it's not to me.
But is that what he was talking? He wasn't talking about himself versus Stockton and Malone. He was trying to justify picking Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell last.
Right.
That's what he was trying to justify.
And I think he was trying to compare Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert to Stockton and Malone because
which is a ridiculous comparison.
Yeah, as ridiculous as it may seem, they're in the same position that Stockton and Malone were in. They're not the sexy team in the league. They're not the team that anybody is particularly, I would say, afraid of. If you ask the top teams in the league who would compete for an NBA Finals appearance right now, I think those teams would still, even with what the Jazz did in the first half, which is crazy, but they would still say that they can beat the Jazz.
Because nobody watches the Jazz.
Well,
So I'm not telling you LeBron was wrong in what he said. That 9 out of 10 NBA fans have never seen the Jazz play. 9 out of 10 NBA fans have never seen Stockton and Malone run the break. Okay? What I'm saying is it was incredibly stupid and disrespectful to say what he said.
well, I definitely think it's going to come back to him. I mean, they're going to see the Jazz in the playoffs. There's no
I hope
doubt.
that, and now I would root for the Jazz to beat. This is why I don't respect LeBron James as a player. This because he talks all of this nonsense, and I operate on a higher level. No, you don't. You don't know the history of the NBA. Don't tell me you operate on a higher level. Like, you lose more than you win in the finals. You make a lot of excuses. You don't make the players around you better. This is why I have issues with LeBron James. Michael Jordan would never have said this. Kobe would never have said this, ever.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Right? Like,
Yeah, those two wouldn't have said it.
LeBron is... Anyway, Eric and Raleigh says Stockton was very good, but he wouldn't cut it in today's NBA. I don't know how you watch. If you've ever seen John Stockton play, you would never have said that. The guy can shoot, he can dish, he was a good defender, tenacious player, had the athletic ability. And again, I would simply say if you want to know what John Stockton was like in 2021, you'd also have to consider that physically the game would have changed his body. He would not be the same player. Giggity says players from Stockton and Malone's era would flourish in today's league without the physicality that they dealt with in their time. Excellent point. What would Michael Jordan be like if he was getting the calls that these guys get today?
Yeah, he'd be better.
And here's my question. Are guys like Bill Laimbeer and Rick Mahorn even relevant players in today's league? Those guys were on the Pistons, by the way, for most of you who don't know. Jake.
You love saying that. It's one of your favorite things to lean on.
Well, am I right? Do you know who Rick Mahorn is?
Like,
You probably don't.
like I
John
love
Sally.
the fact. I love the. Yes, I know. I've heard of. Okay, I don't know John Sally, but I've heard of him. I love the fact that your generation loves to say, well, John would have been able to compete in today's league because his body would have been way different. Well, that's not the conversation we're having. We're having the conversation of John Stockton in his prime with what we saw on TV in today's league versus today's player.
Yeah.
That's the conversation we're having. So I think it's a highly, highly, highly convenient thing to say, well, with today's technologies, he would have been a better player and would have been able to compete. I completely disagree with that.
Okay.
But that's just I guess that's just a philosophy thing.
Which is fine. I don't even. It is what it is. I think it's. Yeah, and Fat Jesus says the problem with youth is the first sign of being old. Get off my lawn. I don't disagree with that. I agree. My frustration is that I again, whether we're talking about American history or sports history, I just don't think millennials give a damn or want to put in the effort to understand the history of our country. To understand, I think when you talk about the racial divides in this country and the fact that it's one of the, still to this day, one of the main talking points. I don't think most people that are below the age of 30 in this country understand the plight of the black man through the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I really don't. I don't think most sports fans or NBA fans understand the epidemics that faced the black NBA player in the 70s and 80s. Mm-hmm. I don't think most NBA fans today understand what Magic and Larry did for the NBA in the 80s. There are not many fans who can tell you why Magic and Bird needed Dr. J in the 80s. I just don't. I think, and it's really unfortunate because it leads you to the take where you say that John Stockton and Karl Malone can't play in today's NBA.
I didn't say they can't play. That's not what I said. I said that I don't think that John Stockton would be regarded as one of the best point guards in today's game. I don't think he would be. I think he would be regarded as one of the best distributors, certainly, because if you can pass, you can always pass. That's just a gifted ability that he had. But I don't think when you compare him to, again, I think Steph Curry may be the starkest contrast that we could find in today's game with the way that Steph plays the game. But if you were to put Steph into the 80s, Steph would probably not be able to shoot as many threes as he does today because of the physicality back then. But if you were to bring Stockton into today's game, he would not be anything to write home about because of the fact that in his time, the NBA was not a 3-and-D league. The NBA was a physical league that was played on the block and in transition. So I think it works both ways. I don't think if you brought Steph back or brought Stockton forward, they'd be the guy that they are. And I just think that, you can criticize millennials and guys like me all day if you want to, but you can't on one hand say that Michael would dominate in any era that he played in and then say that LeBron James wouldn't go back and dominate those guys, because he would. He would.
There were players, Karl Malone and LeBron James are very similar
They
players.
may have the same build. There is not a chance on God's green earth that Karl Malone would be on the perimeter with LeBron James, and anybody would pick Karl Malone to stop LeBron James. That would not happen.
Oh, I think if you put them together in the same age, he would.
Both in their primes.
I'm just telling
Both in
you.
their primes.
You don't. We're wasting time, because if you really think that Karl Malone couldn't hang defensively, you just don't understand who he was. I mean, he is, and I detest Karl Malone because of his humanity. I mean, he's a terrible person, frankly.
Yeah, notice he wasn't on Michael Jordan's documentary either.
The things he said, who cares if he was in a documentary? Who cares? I don't
because
care.
It speaks to who he was as a dude.
The guy was not a good human being, period. Right? He was asked to be in that documentary. He turned it down. I don't care. What I'm telling you is Karl Malone would not be outdone by anybody in the NBA today. The guy took his body seriously. His game evolved. I mean, Karl Malone could play in any generation. The guy was absolutely the first linebacker playing forward in the NBA. He was LeBron before he was LeBron, before LeBron was even LeBron. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was the only thing that LeBron James does that Karl Malone, I don't know if he could or not. He's not. He was never going to be a three-point shooter because that's not what the game demanded at the time. I think if you said to Karl Malone, hey, we need you to shoot 35% from three, he could probably work on it and do it. Because his touch was unbelievable. His touch at the rim was amazing. Like his turnaround jump shot, he had incredible ability to hit the mid-range. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, Karl Malone, I'm telling you, Karl Malone could play in any era. It doesn't matter. Sean says, I think all he was saying was nobody wants to play in a small market. I mean, if the Jazz were in a different market, they would have gotten more respect. I think Salt Lake City is exactly that. I think Salt Lake City is a market that has a stigma because of the LDS faith and the Mormon Church. I think, and I don't know that you ever get rid of that. I think the youth movement away from the church probably is going to have a major impact on that over the next decade.
Yeah, it's helping, but it takes time.
See. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know how you ever overcome that, or if you ever overcome
You win.
That.
That's how you overcome it.
I don't know.
You win.
Yeah.
By winning, you say, hey, we can do this.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting. Eric says John Stockton would be Rajon Rondo in today's game. No, Stock can really shoot the three.
Yeah.
John Stockton can really shoot.
I understand why you make the comparison, but yeah, I think that's selling Stockton short.
Yeah, I think that's rough. Eric also says, when I play NBA Live 95 on my Sega Genesis, I always choose the Warriors. Well, of course you do. Mm-hmm. You're a Warriors fan. And Barry's been going off about Mark Jackson. And I don't disagree with this. I actually don't disagree with this at all. I think that Barry makes a really good point. The history of the NBA is vastly unknown by the modern era. Look at a guy like Mark Jackson. Mark Jackson is now more known for cheating on his wife and having a scandal than he is for being one of the best point guards ever. Yeah, that's true. When has Mark Jackson ever thought about as one of the best point guards ever?
Yeah.
He's not. Right? And if you think about, and his other point here about Karl Malone is the Patrick Ewing effect. Mm-hmm. Patrick Ewing is one of the best centers that's ever played in the NBA. What's he known for? Not dunking a basketball. Trying to finger roll a ball into the hoop instead of dunking it. And he misses, and the Knicks lose, and the Knicks never win a championship with him. Mm-hmm. And so he's known as a disappointment. I think today's NBA fan has a lack of perspective and understanding of the history of the game. And I think it is what it is. And I don't even know it. I don't know that it's a bad thing or a good thing. I think it's sports in general. I think we are uniquely tied to the people that we revere. And we revere the people that we're watching now. Like you know, to your credit, you know, obviously you're sitting there with Baker Mayfield over your left shoulder, but you're not the guy who's ever going to sit here and say that, oh, Baker's the best quarterback ever.
No.
I think you have a little more perspective, but that's because you work in the media. I think the garden variety fan does not. Tommy Tulips. Okay. Tommy Tulips. Tommy Tulips says, it's sad that John Stockton is this undervalued. Great humanitarian and an elite basketball player no matter the generation. Agree with that. And by the way, Will said essentially the same thing, that John Stockton's always going to be undervalued. His point was John's white, and so nobody will ever respect him as a basketball player. I think that's a little out of left
So does
field,
that mean that Steve Nash isn't respected as one of the best point guards in the league? Come on.
Oh, I think that Steve Nash is vastly undervalued today. I think people know him as the head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. I think he's a little younger than Stock was, so more people know him as a player.
Steve Nash is in Kobe's era, and I think that's why he gets more respect than John Stockton does.
I would agree with that. I would absolutely agree with that. It is what it is. Let's talk about the All-Star game, now that we've spent 32 minutes defending John Stockton. You know, I think I was incredibly disappointed in everything that wasn't the three-point contest. Like, it used to be, and this is just me, All-Star Saturday was the event. Like, I remember growing up having to watch the slam dunk competition. Now, I was growing up in Chicago. I was growing up with Michael Jordan versus Dominique Wilkins. And, you know, early in my career in radio, Neek and Jordan, you know, like they had great battles, right? Like, I grew up in what I think is the golden era of the modern NBA. When you had the All-Star Slam Dunk with Kenny Walker, with Jordan, with Spud Webb.
Yeah, actual like nameplate players.
That could really go out there and they cared about winning the Slam Dunk competition. I remember playing on the driveway, putting my one finger up in the air, saying that three was going in, because that's what Larry Bird did. Right? I remember buying a Chicago Bulls warm-up jacket because Larry Bird wore it in the three-point competition. He competed in a warm-up jacket. So I had to have the Bulls one, right? That's the impact that NBA Saturday had on me. Now, COVID's changed things. I get it. We did everything in one day. I totally understand it. There was nothing compelling in the slam dunk competition. Cassius Stanley got screwed, in my opinion. There were no stars in that. Like, I get it.
It was just patchwork, basically.
It was. It was a throw-together event that was not compelling.
Yeah.
The skills competition was not compelling.
Lost a lot of respect for Luka in that competition.
Because he didn't even try, right? But I look at the three-point competition, Steph having to hit the two ball on the very last rack to win it was awesome. And the fact that Mike Conley, who only hit one shot in the actual game, but went nutty in the three-point contest, I loved it.
Yeah.
I thought the three-point contest was the highlight of the weekend, of the day, rather.
I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought that, you know, that first round where Steph goes off for, what did he have, 31, I think, was amazing. I mean, that's living up to the brand, man. That's living up to the greatest shooter of all time label, and I think he did a great job. But, yeah, I think, you know, on the flip side, you know, for the Jazz, I thought they had a nice showing overall. You know, yeah, Conley doing what he did in the three-point contest was a lot of fun. That definitely came out of left field, I think, for a lot of people. But for people who know the Jazz and watch the Jazz, they probably weren't particularly surprised that Mike Conley did well, especially from the top of the key, because he does like to shoot from that area of the floor. But yeah, overall, the three-point competition was fun. I think my biggest problem with the dunk contest is that nobody of name or consequence is in the dunk contest. Who cares that Obi Toppin was in the dunk contest? Like, yeah, he's a fun rookie to watch, but where's Zion in the dunk contest? Like, isn't that what Zion's known for? Isn't that what we saw in overtime and you know, Ball Is Life on Instagram all the time? Right? Like Zion Williamson dunking on kids and having a good time doing it. Why is he not in the dunk contest? Where are any of the high flying nameplates. Like I know that Derrick Jones Jr. competes every single year, but I want to see him. That's what he's known for. Yes, he's improved his shot, but he's known as a high flyer. I want to see a guy like that. And the fact that, on a year where you got to patchwork it together, you couldn't even bring like some high profile players into it, just totally like ruined it in my opinion.
Yeah, it wasn't fun. And again, maybe this is me screaming, "Get off my lawn." The All-Star game just wasn't fun.
Yeah.
Having watched it and watched all of it, and I mean, it was cool the way Dame hit that three to end the game. I thought it was the alley-oop to Curry and then to CP3, I thought was really fun. But watching a guy like LeBron James half-ass the effort, in the first half was, just who that guy is, I think.
Yeah.
Damn. I've lost a lot of respect for LeBron James over this week.
I know.
The things he said about the Jazz, and he didn't give a full effort in that game.
No.
I mean, and maybe I'm making too much of it.
But I don't think most players give a full effort. I think that there's a difference between giving a half effort and then just straight up just not playing. And I think that there were a lot of moments in that game where he just didn't even, play almost. He was out there, but he just didn't really try, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who agree with me that this was a waste of time. I feel like the NBA All-Star Game was, I mean, if you didn't watch it, did you really miss anything?
No, and I think this is what the players were kind of getting at this year, that not only did you have a shortened offseason, obviously the Lakers are front and center on that, but I think overall you had a shortened offseason, and I don't think that I think the NBA trying to force an All-Star weekend is dumb, because now you're going to come right back into games this week, and you haven't really rested. There hasn't really been a resting period.
Yeah, that's my biggest question is, should there even have been a game?
Like, why can't we just say, hey, these are the All-Stars this year. We're not going to have a game or a weekend because of COVID. We're going to play it safe, and then we're gonna get back on with life.
And it was a nice moment for Mike Conley, obviously. This is the first time in his, 14
years
that he's been an NBA All-Star. So I get that there were nice moments. I agree with you on like Zion Williamson. It's cool that, you have Giannis out there banking in threes. Neat, dude, that's cool. We know you can't shoot. We get it, right? Like, we know that all Zion does is not shave his neck well and dunk basketballs. We get it, right? That was awkward. Like, all the razor stubble on his neck, that looked uncomfortable. But we get it. At some point, we just need to move past it.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't have had an All-Star game this year, when we are all vaccinated and we're at, 60 to 70% vaccination. All right, cool. Let's do that. And we're all moving in that direction. Awesome. Mm-hmm. Right? I can't wait to see full baseball stadiums and full football stadiums and real college football this fall. Like, I'm really excited for that.
Yeah.
This game shouldn't have happened.
I agree.
I think it was incredibly short-sighted.
I completely agree.
And, just a couple of the things I did enjoy. I think Steph Curry is an absolute delight. I mean, his spirit, that alley-oop dunk, and the fact he hung on the rim, and that he put 31 up in the first round of the three-point competition and then had to hit that last ball to win it.
Yeah.
I just think that Steph Curry, I don't know how you don't like Steph Curry.
Yeah, he's a fan favorite, man.
I think there's a lot of hate for Steph out there. I think his handle, his game, his energy, the fact he ran over and high-fived his wife.
Yeah.
What is there not to like about Steph Curry?
Yeah, man. He's a great guy. Literally, like, I don't think I can't honestly think of something that he's done wrong or that, like, a mistake he's made in his career or whatever. Like, I can't think of one of those moments for him. So kudos to him, having a great career.
Yeah, and I think a couple of the other things that stood out to me is that this is a major market league again. And I know that that's been painfully obvious for decades. This is a major market league. When you look at the Nets, you look at the Lakers,
the Knicks,
the Warriors. Yeah, but the Knicks weren't. I mean, Toppin was there, but
Julius.
But was Julius really there? You know what I mean? Like, he was in the skills competition, But if you look at Zach LaVine, I thought was was interesting. Like his stature's clearly grown.
Yeah.
The Bulls aren't a big factor. But if you look at Los Angeles, you had Tatum and Jaylen Brown in Boston. You look at what Luka's meant to Dallas. You look at Harden and Kyrie. Kyrie dominated in this game in Brooklyn. This is a major market league, right? Like, I don't know Cleveland. I don't know Portland. I mean, Simons and obviously Dame hitting that 3 to win the game. Like all that's cool.
Right.
But the Portland's, I mean, obviously what's going on with Salt Lake and the Jazz, this is a major market league.
Is Dallas considered a major market?
Oh, I think it is. I think that it's Dallas, Texas, man. Everything's bigger in Dallas, right?
I guess. I don't know. I feel like, well, I mean, maybe post Harden they're not what they were, but while Harden was there, I feel like Houston was a big deal.
Houston was a big deal. And I think Dallas is bigger than Houston.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Luka's interesting to me because he's not a superstar. I mean, he plays like a superstar. He's got superstar talent. He's not a superstar.
Right.
And I think a lot of it is he's a foreign-born player, right? I think he's one of those guys, like, I'm not buying shoes because of Luka.
Right.
I have bought, like I love my Coming to Americas, the Giannis's, the Freak Ones. But, I mean, I'm not buying shoes because of Luka.
No, and I think that, Luka and the rest of the Jordan athletes, I mean, they're fine, but the shoe just isn't good.
No.
It's not good.
Well, I liked Jason Tatum's version of it.
Yeah.
By the way, there's some Air Max Day is coming.
Yeah,
there's
Nike has a lot
some heat coming.
Yeah, Nike has a lot coming. I just think that there isn't really a great, there's not a great Nike athlete shoe right now. I'm not a big fan of LeBron's line. I don't like PG's line. I'm not a big Giannis fan.
PG's line has kind of gone away.
PG's early stuff was nice, but there's not like Kobe's shoe line stopped. It's over. Like, they're just re-releasing what he had. And don't get me wrong, I love Kobe's shoes, like the 4, the 5, the 8s, even the 6s. Like, all of those are awesome shoes, but there isn't, when you were like, hey, who's the athlete in the NBA who's got a great shoe right now? I can't really think of one. I'm saying, hey, it's still Jordan, it's still Kobe. It's not LeBron anymore. The LeBron 10's the best shoe in LeBron's line, and it has been for quite some time. And that thing is 10 years old now.
I'm just not, I like playing in LeBrons. But what is that, a LeBron 16, I guess?
Sure.
I don't love... I
mean, KD shoes are okay. They're okay,
They're really colorway dependent.
Yeah,
especially
they're okay.
the one that's out there now.
Yeah.
They're really colorway dependent. And it is, boy.
But this weekend is a great example. Did we see almost any retro Jordans in the All-Star game?
No.
Did we see, I think, what was it? I think Julius Randle was one of the only guys wearing Kobe's in the All-Star game this year. I don't know, man. We need, the other thing that's really sad about this, no matter who you ask, is that this generation of player, the LeBron draft class, like the LeBrons, the Stephs, that caliber player is leaving the league now. They're aging out, which is really sad.
You guys never...
Here we go.
I always like it when it starts with, you guys never. Ben says, you guys never talk about Adidas. I'm hardcore Adidas, whether it's Don or Dame. Both Utah guys, I love Adidas. Why do you not talk about them ever? As in never, ever. Ever.
What's there to like about Adidas, bro?
Adidas?
What's there to like? Okay, we've got the Ultra Boost. The Harden Volume 2 was the best basketball shoe I've ever had from Adidas. I tried Derrick Rose's shoe and hated it. I tried one of their non-athlete
You hated
shoes.
his shoe?
Yeah, it was very stiff. It wasn't a great shoe, and the traction was not good either, know? And so when I'm looking for a basketball shoe, I don't think of Adidas just because, hey, by the way, I can put on a Nike, and I know that I'm going to get great traction, whether it's a LeBron, whether it's a Kobe, a Durant, a PG. All these shoes have phenomenal traction. In my experience, the issue is that the Harden Volume 2 is the only Adidas shoe that I've tried, and I've tried many, like I was saying, that actually has some traction. You know what my bigger issue is with that even? The traction goes away. It's not a durable compound the way the LeBron or the Kobe or the KD is.
Yeah.
And that's my issue with Adidas.
And I just think functionally speaking, Adidas is a retro line, right? And one of the things that I always loved growing up was the Samba, which is an indoor soccer shoe.
Yeah.
But it was always hip and, like I like shell toes.
Great lifestyle shoe.
Yeah, it is a great, like the NMD now is a great shoe. But Adidas does not have wide appeal because they've never had, like Kobe was supposed to be their guy, and their designs on the Kobe line were terrible.
Yeah.
They were really, really bad.
Yeah.
And like I couldn't even tell you who their number one is right now. But I would say that Puma's probably out.
Dame is there as one of their athletes.
Yeah, they're trying, right? They're trying, but Puma has more swag than Adidas does right now, I would say.
Yeah.
If you look at the rookies coming in, a lot of them are going Puma instead of Adidas or Nike. I don't know.
I just am not an Adidas guy. I guess that's what it comes down to. I'm not saying that their shoes suck. You're never going to see me wearing Adidas on a basketball court. That's not happening.
I would agree.
I do have a pair of gold Ultra Boosts that I really like. I don't wear them a lot, but I really like them.
They're comfortable to walk around in.
But that's the thing with Adidas. All we ever see is, Ultra Boost discounted, Ultra Boost, Ultra Boost, Ultra Boost. Like, okay, great, we get it. You've got Ultra Boost, but what else do you have? That's the thing.
Man, I'm really surprised that some of the people. There's a lot of comments on shoes. Brandon says, "Can you guys put an estimate on how much money you've spent on Jordans?"
Dude.
Oh my God,
bro. Bro.
With all due respect,
Dude,
Brandon,
it's gotta
can't
be.
even.
Dude, I added three pairs in the last week, and that's probably what, like the cool gray 3s were 190. The Jordan lows were not. The Jordan 1 low was 90. And then I just got what were the ASW, right?
Yeah.
Is that what it is? The patent leather one was like, I think it was like 125 or 130. So for me, I don't know. It's thousands. I mean, it's got to be.
I'm easy tens of thousands over the last. I mean, like what time period? I mean, probably.
I don't know, the last 10 years.
Oh my God.
The last 10 years is probably at least 10,000 at least, because you figure,
Dude,
back
to 2011.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Well, it's kind of funny with your collection because your collection you downsized and then you've picked it back up again.
Well, yeah, because I had a bunch of Kobe's that I wish now I'd hung on to. But I had a bunch of Kobe's. I had a bunch of LeBrons that I ran through, but I played in all those LeBrons. And I didn't get serious about collecting Jordans probably until 3-4 years ago. Mm-hmm. And now I'm probably.
Let me put it this way for your collection. You're at a point now where you guys are talking about making a closet room out of a spare bedroom.
Yeah.
That's where it's at, just to give people perspective.
Like, what choice do I have?
I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm just saying when you ask how much, like volume-wise, that's where it's at.
Yeah. All right, hit subscribe, thumbs up, please. Appreciate that very much. Yeah, wait. To answer your question, at least probably $25,000 in my house right now worth of Jordans.
Yeah.
That I own.
I don't think that's an exaggeration. Just
probably $25,000. Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of. Yeah. It's fine. Hey, some more Yelp ads. Hit the subscribe button, thumbs up. Appreciate that. As always,